All right, we're moving into week 3. I hope that everyone is doing well with this accelerated course. Reach out if you're having any issues. I sent you guys an invite to a Zoom meeting this Tuesday at 5:30. I'm real excited about it. It's with a man by the name of Edward Palmer. He's a pastor in the state of Kentucky, and he has agreed to speak with you guys on the ideas of social injustice, implicit bias, disparity, mass incarceration of African American men in the state of Kentucky specifically. I know him through working with the judge I worked for, and he has put on presentations for the social justice system. And he has a lot of data revolving around what I just mentioned. And then at the end of his lecture, he's going to accept questions and provide answers, and I'm excited about it. I sent you guys an invite on the announcements module on Canvas, and I also sent an email, so I really hope that you guys join. It's not mandatory, but I know that from a lot of your week 1 responses that many of you are interested in that. So please join in. So I want to move through this PowerPoint pretty quickly with you guys tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about evidence-based practice, the importance of it. Evidence-based practice, there are 3 components I want to highlight here. You have the client and their situation. So understanding the client individualistically is very important in the practice of social work. Not every client's going to have the same issue, and if they have the same issue, they're not going to react to that issue in the same kind of way as another client with that same issue. So keep that in mind. Clinical experience is another component here. Clinical experience doesn't mean therapeutic experience. What it could mean is basically what you bring to the table as a social worker from your training, your experience, and any knowledge that you can bring to the table. That's what that clinical experience piece is really talking about. Then there's research and effectiveness. It's really important that prior to developing a plan with your client regarding whatever situation that they're faced with, that you research and find interventions that are evidence-based and implement those appropriately. It's also really important that you guys, given these 3 components, examine whether you are comfortable treating this particular client, given your experience, thinking about gauging the client's comfort level and working with you. Now, if you are unable to assist a client, it's always okay to refer them on to another practitioner that you know is well-versed on whatever their situation might be, or well-versed on an intervention that they're more comfortable with. We do that a lot in the practice. All right? Steps of evidence-based practice. So there's a process here. There's a process, and then there's a process, and then there's content. So process, you're going to assess your client first and foremost. What's going on with your client? Research the presenting issue. It's always important to discuss with your client where they're at. Like this term of meet your client where they're at. You hear it a lot in the field. And what that means is trying to understand the client's perspective of what is going on in their lives. Because your perspective as a practitioner is going to be completely different at times than the perspective of who you're working with, okay? So keep that in mind. And then, like I said in the previous slide, do your research. What interventions are most appropriate for this patient? Talk with your patient about these interventions. Is your patient, client willing to engage in such an intervention? Are they comfortable with it? Think about things like that. Then when you create a plan with your client, always keep in mind, you are not creating the plan. They are. Empower them to create the plan themselves. Ask questions that are not leading. Ask questions that generate ideas from them. Oftentimes when I'm talking with my clients or patients, I'm encouraging them to tell me, how do you want to achieve? A question I ask is, how do you think you can achieve this goal that you have set for yourself? And then you move towards implementing the plan and follow through. And you're talking with your client about steps they're taking in tackling whatever goal they might have. Okay? Then, like I said, the second component of evidence-based practice here is the content. So we talk a lot about motivational interviewing in the practice of social work. We talk about trauma-informed care. Now, these different types of therapy we won't really delve into because this is a mixture of graduate level students but also undergrad students. So some of you might end up using certain forms of therapy, but what I really want to focus on tonight are the two ideas of motivational interviewing and then utilizing trauma-focused care as you work with patients. So the risk needs models. In that, what that means is you're assessing the client's risk, the client's need. We know that folks are at risk when they are not having their basic needs met. I encourage you to spend some time in the risk needs models, determine your individual practice model preferences. That's really important when you are addressing client needs, is to kind of have a model in mind, an approach in mind. Motivational interviewing, a little bit about the historical content of it. I'm not going to read over this with you, but I will tell you that motivational interviewing is utilized in a non-therapeutic setting. So it's something that we can all utilize as practitioners, as case managers, as therapists. Motivational interviewing is simply helps you to de-escalate your clients, and it assists you, like I said, in developing goals and objectives. You're not going to tell your clients, here's what we're doing, here's what you're going to do. Instead, you are asking them to examine, through motivational interviewing skills, asking open-ended questions, for example. You're asking them to examine what they believe their needs are and how they believe they can meet those needs. So in motivational interviewing, it's important to encompass a level of empathy with your clients, okay? In the world of social work practice, empathy is major. People are used to a punitive approach, and especially in forensic social work practice, you'll be working with people who are justice involved, and they are used to situations of, I didn't complete something, I'm going to jail, or I'm in trouble, or I did this wrong and I'm bad. And I don't want your clients, when you're working with them, try to alleviate those feelings with them and be empathetic. Reflective listening, repeating back to them what they're saying, affirming what they're telling you they feel, right? Like, I understand, like, you just told me that you feel this way when this happens. Tell me a little more about that. That's open-ended, it's also reflective, and it will help you to establish an incredible rapport with your client as well. Okay? So there are 4 components of motivational interviewing: partnership, acceptance, compassion, evocation. So I want to talk to you guys about evoking, okay? Okay, so sorry about that. So evoking, that's essentially a mechanism where you realize as a practitioner that the individuals you're working with have the answers within themselves, that we don't give them the solution, that we ask them to give us the solution. So we evoke that. We ask questions that will lead them to self-exploration, and it helps you to create a plan instead of for with your client. Okay. All right. So moving into trauma, the one takeaway that I want you guys to have from this course and from my piece on trauma: event, experience, effects. Okay. 3 E's. We'll talk about 3 R's here in a few minutes. But what trauma looks like for one person may not be what trauma looks like for another person. Please keep that in mind as you practice your work. One person may experience trauma from missing a bus and missing an appointment, while one person may think that's not trauma. It may be for that person. So keep that in mind. Keep your compassion and your empathy, and recognize your biases, transference. Keep all of that in mind when working with patients. Most of our patients have been traumatized. Okay, hold on. There's a bunch of pictures popping up. All right, here are some statistics on trauma. Keep these in mind too as you move through your practice. What it tells me is that trauma is prevalent, and that most of the people we're going to be working with have been through traumatic experiences. Okay. Trauma-informed model. Here are the 4 R's that I mentioned a minute ago: realization, recognition, response, and resisting re-traumatization. I wanted to touch on re-traumatization real quick. People, like in forensic interviewing, we don't want to do these interviews over and over and over with our patients. It is traumatizing. It's re-traumatizing. So we utilize our resources, like connecting with the Children's Advocacy Center, because they are specifically trained in forensic interviewing, right? And if we have that resource, we utilize it to reduce that re-traumatization. 6 principles of trauma-informed model. Keep these in mind when working with your clients and patients. Empowerment, voice, and choice. That's a big one, I think. Read on that. And the reason I'm speeding through this is because I'm running out of time on my video recording. But another thing with trauma that I want to stress that I utilize is I don't ask people, what did you do? Why did you do that? Instead, I ask people, what happened to you? Tell me about what happened to you. So please, utilize that in your practice. It's going to change your rapport with your patients and clients, and sometimes, and especially the clients we're working with in forensic practice, they're used to a punitive approach. You could change their life by saying, what happened to you? They're used to hearing you did something wrong and you're going to jail. Okay, so again, just really quick, you've got a weekly participation activity that's due Sunday, and your first core assignment, don't forget about that. It's due week 5. I hope you guys are working on it now. And please, again, join me this Tuesday at 5:30 with Pastor Palmer. Hope you guys are enjoying your week and you enjoy your weekend upcoming. Thanks.